Welcome to Garden and Nature Southwest. Let's continue with part 2 of Summer Garden. If this is your first time joining this podcast, my name is Vani. I have been gardening here in the Chihuahuan desert climate since 2005. And since 2013, I've been growing native plants and creating a wildlife habitat. And since then, summer seasons have been very different. Previously, when I was growing mainly vegetable garden and non-native ornamental plants, summer used to be somewhat of a dormant season. And this is something that I think most of us have experienced gardening here in Southwest, where temperatures can be really hot in June, July, and August before the rains arrive. Plants struggle a lot. We almost take a break sometimes from gardening till the cool weather arrives again in fall. But with native plant gardening, there is no real dormant season, neither the summer and nor the winters. Some plants might be dormant, some plants might be struggling in summer, and a lot go dormant in winter. But there is always a lot of activity going on. I still have vegetable plants, but mostly it's native plants and there's an established ecosystem. And that brings with it a lot of activity in the garden, such that you want to step out every single day. Just this morning, as I stepped out, I heard this knocking sound as though something is knocking on a metal. It was actually coming from the bird feeder. There was a curved-bill thrasher in the bird feeder, and it was trying to thrash open the sunflower seed. I usually have black oil sunflower seeds in this feeder. I have been transitioning more and more from the feeders to just natural sources of food in the garden. And over the years, as your plants grow, as they start to produce more berries, as more insects are available, there are more fruits and nectar sources in the garden, you need less and less of bird feeders. So no longer I use any Niger seed feeders or any other sort of mixed seed feeders that I used to use in the past. It's mostly black oil sunflower seeds, and I don't put them out all the time. But for the past week or so, I've been putting it out every day because a pair of black-headed grosbeak have started to show up. I first saw them on the feeder. Well, actually, they came last year too, but I did not see them hang around in the yard that much. They would be on one of the trees, stay for a few minutes and then leave. But this year I noticed them on the feeder. So when I realized that they are willing to use this feeder, I started to fill it every day. And they have been coming every day, and they're on the feeder for a short time, but the rest of the time they're either staying on the desert willow tree or on the elderberry tree. It's quite hot during the daytime, so they're sitting in the shade of these trees. And this is something that you will find out as the garden matures, that these birds discover your garden for some reason. Either it could be a bird feeder or it could be so many other things in the garden that first attract the birds. But once they discover, they like to hang around, they like to stick around because there is a lot for them. Insects and different berries and seeds. So this year I decided to grow more of the sunflower seeds, the native annual sunflowers. I already have native Maximilian sunflowers in my garden. These are perennial sunflowers and they die back in the winter. They sprout back again from the ground in springtime, and they continue to grow throughout the summertime. So at this time, there's a big green mass which is continuing to grow, preparing to flower in fall time when it's going to be tall spikes full of sunflowers. So I really love the Maximilian sunflowers. And it's a good source of seeds for the lesser goldfinches in fall time. But in the summertime, their main natural source of seeds is chocolate daisies in my garden. So I wanted to add something to that. And the native annual sunflowers were growing really well in the front part of my garden, which is in the south side. It has a lot of sun. It was growing even in the non-irrigated areas. The plants remain very small, but they bloom here and there throughout the summertime. So I thought it would be a good addition in the backyard as well, something that is close to my kitchen patio that I'm able to see right from my kitchen window. So I transplanted some of these plants from the front yard, which were growing just, it self-seeds quite a bit. So there were a lot of plants near the driveway that is without any irrigation. So I picked up a lot of plants from there and transplanted them near the kitchen patio. This was early in the spring. And now these plants are tall and they are full of bright blooms. These are behaving very differently from my front garden because this area is in the north part of the garden. It has few hours less of the sun, and I think the main difference is not of the sun. I think the main difference is water. In the front garden, most of the areas that it's growing in is without irrigation or minimal irrigation. This area near the kitchen patio has a little bit more irrigation because that's where the planters are of the herbs and some vegetables that we use very frequently. So with this additional irrigation, it's blooming really well and it's full of bumblebees all the time. I also see butterflies using it, as well as, of course, the finches, the lesser goldfinches have also started to use that. I got the idea of adding more of these sunflowers here in this particular area because last year I had transplanted one plant from the front yard. It was probably around summertime or maybe early fall that I had planted it. It did not flower that much at that time, grew to be maybe about 2 feet tall, had a few flowers, and then dried back. So in the winter time, it was just a dried stalk with some dried up seed heads. I just left it there, didn't pull it out. And one day I saw these lesser goldfinches just going at it, pulling out the seeds from the seed heads. So that's when I decided that as soon as the spring starts, 2026, I'm going to put a lot more plants. And I did that. Now these plants are 4 and 5 feet tall, lots of blooms. And these lesser goldfinches show up apart from the bumblebees and butterflies. And so this area is very active. Along with that, in this area, I had also decided to add some more plants for butterflies. So Gregg's mistflower was another one that I had added there. It has not started to bloom yet. I'm thinking it might have some issues with sunlight also, but I'll see. It's still a new plant. Sometimes after they have established well, then they start to flower. I'm adding the Gregg's mistflower in other areas of the garden as well. I already have it in the front yard, but since it gets a lot of sun, I see some flowering only in the springtime, but summertime it just quiets down completely, and the plants are struggling a lot in the hot sun. There is also a Palo verde tree in the front yard, so as that grows, and the nearby privet tree that grows, it's the native New Mexico olive tree. Once those trees are much bigger and provide a lot more shade, then it might become a bit different, that area, and maybe these plants will do better. So I'm just leaving them alone. They do come back in spring and they're better in fall as well. But what I'm trying to do is also bringing these plants in the backyards where there are a lot more pockets of shade, and also there are some areas where it's not full sun all the time. Now, this plant is well known to a lot of us who garden with native plants because it is commonly available in many nurseries. And I will put all the scientific name of the plants in the show notes so that if you're deciding to buy any plants, you have the correct identification with that scientific name. So Gregg's mistflower is a wonderful source of nectar for the butterflies and is very commonly available in most nurseries. But in the garden, we just have to find out sometimes and experiment with any plants, where it's going to do well, even though it might be native and drought tolerant and all those good qualities. But certain areas in the garden always end up being more favorable to a plant than others. So another plant which is attracting a lot of butterflies at this time is Dalea frutescens. It is also called black dahlia. This is different from Dalea greggii that I mentioned in the last episode. Dalea greggii was a ground cover, but Next to it, I have this large bush, which is the black Dalea, Dalea frutescens. And it is also flowering, not as much as it was when the temperature was cooler, but it is still flowering. And a lot of these butterflies called Rickert's blue, these small blue butterflies, are attracted to this plant, and it happens to be a host plant for them as well. So whenever I'm passing by this area, lots of these small blue butterflies just fly out of this area, as well as bumblebees and other small native bees. They're all hanging around in this bush. Next to this one is a Skeletonleaf goldeneye bush, and that continues to flower even in the summertime right now. Again, another seed source for the lesser goldfinches. I also see a lot of different butterflies, yellow sulfur, sometimes queen butterflies, go to these flowers as well. Let me mention some other ground covers also. There were a couple of them that I mentioned in the last episode. Other ones that are doing also really well. One is called Nama hispidum, and this was also a volunteer in my garden. I let it grow, and now it has spread to several parts in my garden. It also does extremely well, even in areas that have no irrigation. And it has tiny purple flowers, and I see tiny insects going at it. And this is something that I have come to appreciate over the years, that the native plants that we grow in our gardens also provide a habitat, also support these tiny, tiny insects that we may not know about, that we may not notice, that have probably no human beings speaking up for them, for their conservation. You know, the larger insects that we notice, like the butterflies or the honeybees, because humans appreciate the honey, so we notice the honeybees, and thankfully now we're noticing many other native bees. So we are becoming more aware of a lot of these insects, and we are actively trying to support their habitat. But that's a fraction of the species of insects that are out there. That's just a minuscule fraction. So, and especially the tiny ones that nobody notices. They're so tiny. They're like size of a mosquito or less when you go and see these tiny flowers. When you go and closely observe these small flowers, as I sometimes see in these Nama flowers, they are very pretty flowers, and I love this plant. And flowers are very small though. And this is common to a lot of other native plants also, that they may not have very prominent blooms, but they are equally supportive to a lot of these native insect populations. Sometimes it might be the foliage of a plant that the larval stage of a moth or a butterfly or any other insect might be using. Many times we decide to grow a plant based on how it appears, how prominent the blooms are, what is the characteristic of a foliage. We're looking at the design aspect of it. And that is important. That is something that appeals to the creative sides of the gardeners. We're wanting to create this beautiful space. But what I have also realized, that the beauty that we create in the garden doesn't always directly come from the plants. For example, yes, it might be a beautiful flower or a particular color of the foliage that will first attract me to a plant. But then I also want to look at the wildlife that it is supporting, the butterflies, the insects, the birds that it's supporting. Because if it does so, if lots of these creatures are attracted to it, the plant is going to be so much more beautiful than just its foliage or the flowers. And the same goes for the plants that may not have such prominent blooms or the foliage that stands out. These plants may not be noticed in your garden. They might be some low ground cover that may not be blooming, but may act as host plants for a lot of butterflies, may act as a host plant for these unknown insects. And guess what? You're going to have a lot more birds that are going to be feeding on these insects. There are going to be a lot more lizards and other little creatures. I have this roadrunner with quite a bit of personality that comes to our garden, and it is looking for these small creatures, the lizards, the mice, other little wildlife. And that becomes possible only when we start to look beyond just the look of the plant. Because even from the standpoint of appearance of a plant may not have prominent blooms, but it might have beautiful butterflies visiting it. So anyway, coming back to some of these other ground covers, apart from the Nama hispidum, which we were initially talking about with the tiny purple flowers, apart from that, there is also silver ponyfoot that I bought from the nursery, or I believe a plant sale, native plant sale, and it has spread quite a bit. I have noticed that it does not do so well in my front garden, which is south facing, and it has less shade compared to my backyard garden. In the backyard garden, even in the areas that are not very well irrigated, it does well as long as it has some shade from the taller plants. So when it's underneath some plants, some bushes, like for example this Dalea bush, the Skeletonleaf goldeneye, also underneath the Helianthus bush, there are several areas where underneath the plants, underneath some shade, it is growing really well. It is good to have wood mulch or any other sort of mulch to cover the bare soil. But if you can have plants as ground covers, then that gives you added benefit of these plants acting as larval hosts for so many butterflies and other insects, as well as nectar source for many butterflies. So you will find the activity in the garden increasing as a result of these ground covers as your garden matures. And this is true for my garden as well. I'm seeing a lot more butterfly species this year. Windmill vine is another ground cover that volunteered, that showed up by itself, and then I supported it, and it's in many areas of the garden now. It has very pretty light purple pinkish flowers, and it also attracts a lot of butterflies. I also planted Frogfruit this year. Well, actually this year in the backyard garden. I've had it for 2 years in the front garden. So it was tolerating the heat and the sun really well in the front garden. So I decided to add more of it in the backyard garden as well, in the fruit area. It tolerates some moist area as well. We were visiting the Elephant Buttes Lake area in New Mexico near Truth or Consequences. Near that area, I saw large areas covered with frogfruit growing as ground cover, and it was attracting a lot of these native insects and butterflies. This inspiration that gave me an idea that, I should have probably more of it under the fruit area as well, just kind of using as much ground as I can to provide habitat for some more insects. We started a pond also, experimenting with it. It's been just about a month with the pond, month and a half maybe. It's very early. Still, that ecosystem is not established yet. Let's see how it goes. But it's also near the pond that I plan to grow more of frog fruit as well. Another wonderful bush that is providing berries at this time in summer is wolfberry, and many of the birds like verdens and finches usually go in that bush and are eating these berries, so it's fun to watch them. It has a lot of thorns. It gets big, the bush, so I have it near the boundary wall where it is close to the feeders. Sometimes the feeder, when it is filled, I don't fill it all the time, but when it is filled, it has a lot of bird activity. And when there's a lot of bird activity, sometimes the hawks show up. So hawks, kestrels, these visit our gardens. The Cooper's hawk or red-tailed hawk, Swainson's hawk sometimes, also American kestrel. They're frequent visitors. So when they show up, these birds have to look for shelter. So very close by is that wolfberry bush. It's full of thorn. It's thick. Next to it is another skeletonleaf goldeneye bush, which is very dense and you cannot see inside where the bird is. So they have a lot of places to hide. And of course, this wolfberry is really good source of berries throughout the summer. And in springtime, when there was a lot of blooming going on in this bush, I saw so many butterflies. But we're talking about summer. So at this time, berries still going on and birds are loving it. Also, as the garden has grown, hummingbirds have increased in number. We also have had several species of hummingbirds over the years. 3 of them are regular visitors. It's the black-chinned hummingbird, the rufous hummingbird, as well as the broad-tailed hummingbirds. Also, we have spotted annuus hummingbird, and I think there were 2 more. I have to look at my records. I don't remember exactly which ones. But these 3 species have been regularly using our gardens. And again, here also, I try to avoid the feeders, the hummingbird feeders, as much as possible. It's only during the migration time, the fall season, that I put out these feeders for a short period of time. The reason I avoid it is we have hot summers. We have hot weather throughout the year, except for the winter time, a few months. In this hot weather, the sugar water that you prepare can get bad pretty quickly. So you have to be on top of that. You have to clean the feeders. You have to make sure that you're putting out fresh syrup water. And if you're going to do that, there's a particular formula for that, and that needs to be followed. It is on Audubon or All About Birds, one of those websites. I will put it in the show notes if you really do want to put out the feeders. And it's always good to avoid any store-bought ones that have any coloring in it. But even the sugar water, it requires this additional efforts to make sure that they're clean and they're filled with fresh sugar water. The other thing that these feeders do not provide are other nutrients, the vitamins, and so many other nutrients that are present in the natural nectar sources. I have a previous episode that is entirely on the hummingbirds and feeders and such, so you can listen to that for more details. But when we grow plants, we're providing a lot more nutrients and not just calories. So calories are super important, but also are important other nutrients. And even when we're talking about nutrients, different plants, different flowers will provide different kind of nutrients. May not be significantly different, but even minor differences can help them. And so in order to increase that diversity, increase the variety of these flowers for hummingbirds, I have several species. Helianthus was one that I mentioned in the last episode. I also have several different species of Salvia. Salvia greggii performs very well in the West Texas area, in the dry region of southern New Mexico, all the way up to Tucson. In that area, it performs really well, and it has the native range distribution also in this region. It will perform well in other areas too, but this is the native distribution that I'm talking about. Other species of salvias, there's so many, and you can look up on which type of salvias are native to your particular region and try to see if any of these are available in the nurseries. These hummingbirds tend to use so many of these other species. Also the penstemons, the rock penstemons that I mentioned last episode as well. Another native southwest hummingbird plant that I have is the desert bird of paradise, the red one. Hummingbirds really love it. The blooms are really showy and beautiful, and also the butterflies love it. And if you have it in an area of your garden that gets full sun throughout the day, that is the perfect place for it. That's where it will start to bloom early and will continue to bloom throughout the summer season and through fall till cold weather arrives in winter time. So it's really wonderful plant, and I have added another one this year, just a couple of weeks back. So hopefully we'll have more of it next year. But this is another great summer plant to give you that color and vibrancy in the garden. There are many other hummingbird plants too, especially cacti, but unfortunately none of them bloom in the summertime. They're all in the springtime. So in the springtime, they are a really good source also. I thought I would just mention it here since I'm mentioning about different plants for hummingbirds, but in the summertime they're quiet. So I'm just kind of looking for more and more hummingbird plants to add for the summer, as well as in the fall time when they start to migrate. Then also the yellow bells, I mentioned in the last episode, they are also really loved by hummingbirds, as well as the desert willow I mentioned last time. These are all hummingbird favorite plants. Columbines are another one. There are a few flowers that are still there. Most of the columbine bloom was in the springtime. I have it in my garden where it gets only the morning sun, and it has done best in this area. In the front garden, where it's the south part and gets sun most of the day, over time columbines have gradually perished and they're no longer there. In the back garden, where part of the garden gets only morning sun, I decided to grow it there, and it's become a big mass of greenery in that area with the columbines. In springtime, it gets really full of yellow flowers. At this time, there are only few flowers, but that mass of greenery is good too. And it's a good place for the birds to hide and all that habitat and leaf litter that builds under that mass too. It's perfect for a lot of other little critters. So columbines. And I forgot to also mention another hummingbird plant that I have is the cherry skullcap. It's a very low growing plant, small height. But if you have it under partial shade, under a tree maybe, I have it under the golden ball lead tree, and it does really well under this dapple shade. It's almost forming like a ground cover. It's beautiful, and hummingbirds love this one as well. If it's exposed to hot sun throughout the day, then it will struggle. The blooms will be really pale. But if you have it under the tree, under the dapple shade, it will continue to bloom throughout the summer. I think I've covered most of the hummingbird plants. There are several varieties, but I again want to add more and more because the hummingbird number has been increasing, the species have been increasing, and I want to transition away from the hummingbird feeders that I rarely use in the migration season. Okay, I believe I should stop here now. I will see you soon in the next episode with a different topic. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.